Can I have your attention, please?
We took the government.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the governor of the great state of Utah, John Huntsman, who will be the next president of the United States of America.
That's the best darn introduction I think I've ever had. But, you know, that's going to depend in large measure, Commander, on if the young lady back there is willing to come around and support a Republican.
Her name's Colleen.
Colleen's here. Colleen, we're calling you.
This is embarrassing.
Thanks, Commander. This is I know.
I will not support a Republican that does not support the Red Sox. Yes. Yes.
I know this is an unusual outing for any other VFW post in the country, but in New Hampshire, this is not an unusual drop-by. When you're kicking the tires and you're having conversations about what for our little family is going to be a very important decision about a run for the presidency, this is a must-do drop-by. And we're here for a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, we are here to honor our veterans and to tell you how much we love and respect the work they've done. We're here to say you protected our nation in years past. You've protected our freedom and liberty. I've already talked to somebody from the Battle of the Bulge. I've talked to somebody from the Korean War. I've talked to someone who's done tours in Vietnam, and there may be even some
My brother has just done 2 tours in Iraq.
All right, so we have Iraq now represented. So to all of you, we salute your efforts. We thank you for what you have done and what you represent. Second of all, aside from just offering deep and profound thanks on the part of all Americans, is to say one of the more meaningful things I ever did as governor was to get to know a great man by the name of George Wallen in Salt Lake City, Utah. George was a great Marine in the Pacific during World War II, later was a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And to get to know this man, to get to understand his humility, his service and sacrifice was to be around a hero. And I've got to tell you that one of the highlights for me as governor was to be able to parade out George Wallen, who's now passed on. He passed on just a couple of years ago, during a State of the State speech, and to be able to recognize him in front of the entire state of Utah. To have everybody tuned in, to have him stand, to take a bow, to be recognized for the work that he did so many years ago. Not forgotten by the people of our state and the country, by the way, but a great man. And now our VA hospital in Salt Lake is named the George Wallen VA Hospital in recognition of the terrific work and the sacrifice of this man. And I've got to say that one of my last visits to a VFW post in Utah, not unlike this one right here, although minus a pool table, was to talk about a veterans nursing home that our veterans so desperately wanted, and one that ultimately we were able to work out for them. And it was a reminder to me that the way that we treat our veterans in this country is an extension of our goodness as people. That when our men and women in uniform go out and put their life on the line, as so many do, and come back and are in need of the services that we then provide as a country, the way that we stand up, the way that we embrace, and the way that we treat our veterans is an extension of our human heart as Americans. It's a big deal. And so, not only did we talk about the Veterans Nursing Home, but it was a chance for everybody in that room to reflect on why we were putting up a Veterans Nursing Home, and to talk about the individuals who were heading towards the Veterans Nursing Home and what they had done for their country over the years. It was a terrific reminder. But let me just say, as I mentioned to one other VFW post a couple of days ago, let's not forget that we're experiencing a time of war. And this is in a time of war. Unfortunately, there are some of our great soldiers who don't return. And when they don't return, it means there are families here on the home front. There are kids without a mom or a dad. There are spouses left behind. And that means we all need to step up then and play a role like never before in making sure that we comfort those during a time of loss. We play a helpful role in making sure that they don't do without. And I do recall as governor, maybe the most meaningful event that I experienced was a trip to Afghanistan where the day before I arrived in Kabul, and this was probably, must have been 4 years ago, one of our National Guard troopers was killed right on the Pakistani border by the Taliban. He was forward deployed right on the border doing very dangerous work. We arrived in Kabul, and I was told right upon my arrival, and I was there as governor visiting some of our troops, I was told that we had lost one of our own. And would I be willing to go to his memorial service that night at Camp Phoenix, which is just outside of Kabul, and make some comments about this young man, Second Lieutenant Scott Lundell. Well, I didn't know the Second Lieutenant Scott Lundell. I never met him. All I knew was that one of our own from Utah had gone down the day before, and that I was being asked to go say a few words on his behalf. I stood up in that auditorium at Camp Phoenix, looking at all of these bedraggled soldiers who had put in a good day's work standing in front of me, and there was the rifle and the helmet in true memorialized fashion in front of the podium, belonging to Scott Lundell. And I didn't know what to say when I stood up, because I didn't know Scott Lundell, but I did know this. Here's a man who gave the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of this country, and whose family I would have to see within the coming days. I said what I felt was appropriate, the words that came to heart about his service and sacrifice and what it meant to our state and country. I then collected his personal belongings and carried them all the way back to Salt Lake City, and went out to visit his wife and 4 kids with our adjutant general from the National Guard. Now, as governor, you're the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, so you get a sense of the service and sacrifice made by our members of the Guard who are going on 4th and 5th deployments these days. I mean, they are stretched to the maximum. We knocked on her door, and she opened it, and there she stood, as courageous as any human being could possibly be given the circumstances, with her 4 kids there. I took the bag of personal effects from Second Lieutenant Scott Lundell. I handed them over to Mrs. Lundell, and I said, on behalf of a grateful state, on behalf of a grateful country, we want to thank you for having given the ultimate sacrifice. And I stopped to think in the moment, you know, this is the most challenging thing a governor does in this kind of work, when you've got to stand face to face and eyeball to eyeball with those who have lost the most important thing in their lives. And we pledged as a family, and I remember we had them over to the governor's mansion a while later with a lot of other great family members who had made a similar sacrifice. And our pledge was, if you need a daddy, if you need someone to attend the graduation ceremony or an Eagle Scout Award ceremony or something else, call me. And if I'm not doing anything else as governor, I'll be there and I'll fill that role. And I remember we got a couple of calls along about birthdays, when a little daughter or a little son was having a birthday and there wasn't a daddy around. Either they had lost their lives or they were serving abroad. We had the great privilege of playing daddy in a couple of instances, and it was a great thing. And it was a lesson learned, I think, on our own boys who now are pursuing their own careers, and they've chosen the military as a pathway they want to pursue, not because of what we have done, but because of the influence that they have felt, the mentoring, the role models, the heroes they have seen in society growing up, which is a powerful thing. So aside from all the other things that you do and you stand for, never forget that during your lives, you have probably shaped and influenced a lot of other human beings who have seen your uniform and want to be like you. So thank you for it. I also want to thank Paul for being here, who's a great friend, and he's been willing to introduce us to the veterans community. We're just beginning that, and I think we're going to be doing a lot more of that, Paul, and I thank you for it. I thank you for your great service to the country. Just to kind of get to the bottom line here, our little family, and I hope you're able to shake hands with Mary Kay and shake hands with our daughter, Gracie May. She's displaying that Southern New Hampshire University sweatshirt, where yesterday we had the honor of giving the commencement speech. It was her birthday the day before, so they very kindly gave her a sweatshirt. And now she is totally gratuitously showing off to everybody, as if to establish herself as a local person. And Liddy is around here someplace. Liddy! She's already causing trouble in the corner back there. I can tell by the smirk on her face. Just part of our family, we have 7 kids. You get a little sampling of 2 of them here. We're going through a most remarkable process, and that's coming off of 2 years in China. If you want to get a sense of how this world is changing, and what it means for the United States, drop yourself in Beijing, China for a couple of years, and you'll get a feel for what the 21st century is going to look like. We've served as governor, been elected a couple of times. We've served our country in other capacities. We've been in business. We've done some humanitarian work. Most importantly, I'm just a dad, and I feel deeply about my kids and about the next generation. And I'll be darned if any of us are willing to pass on to the next generation a world that is less good than the world that we got. And I'm mindful of that every time I have to sit down with my little daughter Gracie and anticipate the world that she's walking into. We have a real choice in the years ahead. And I think the whole election cycle of 2012 is likely to be about this very theme. It'll be approached and attacked differently, but the bottom line is going to be we're either prepared to meet the needs of the 21st century from an economic competitiveness standpoint or not. And if we are not, if we just choose to kind of amble along as we are today, which is to say our debt moving up, over the last 2.5 years has gone from $10 trillion to $14 trillion. This trajectory is such that the impact it has on our dollar and the way the dollar goes, the way it impacts every family's quality of life and standard of living and our overall competitiveness, this is a serious issue. This is a very serious issue. So we have a choice. It's either accepting that we have a lost decade as a country, like the Japanese have had, by the way. We're into their second lost decade. And I'm convinced that the American people don't want a lost decade. Or, instead, we make a conscious decision that we want to recharge and fire our engines of growth economically. And we announce that this country is going to launch an industrial revolution. You know what I mean by industrial revolution? We've had those in the past. When we've had industrial revolutions, we have transformed the economic landscape not only in our country, but in the world. And it means we're going to have to look at tax reform. And it means we're going to have to look at regulatory reform. And it means we're going to have to take some really bold and innovative steps toward energy independence, just to begin the conversation. But it's totally doable. And I think it's completely up to us and what we decide as we debate our way through the next election cycle. So the stakes could be higher to my mind. Important for every family, particularly important for the next generation. And let me just conclude by saying this, and I know I'm a little embittered by having just lost at the pool table. A little embittered by that, but I think the bitterness in this country has gotten out of hand. And I'm here to tell you that we've been divided for too long in this country. It's time for us to come together. We don't all need to agree on issues. We're never going to all agree on issues. But let's agree that we're all Americans, that we're all American citizens, first and foremost. We all want a better tomorrow for all the reasons that I've just discussed. We can have debates and we can have discussions and we can do it in a civil tone with a civil discourse while disagreeing on the content. Absolutely we can do that, and I'm here to tell you it's high time that this country start to bind up its wounds. And all you have to do, as I've done recently, is stop in the Lincoln Memorial and take a look on the right-hand side. Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. I can't recite it for you, but I've read it 1,000 times. It's eloquent, it's simple, and it's to the point. And you remember how divided our country had been in the run-up to 1865 when it was delivered. No other time in our nation's history, I would argue, have we been so divided, north and south, around some pretty important issues. And Lincoln simply stood up and said, it's time that we bind up our wounds. It's time that we recognize the future. It's time that we take care of our widows and our orphans, is what he says in the last sentence. And, if in times past, when we have been divided, we have had leaders who have been able to stand up and call for civility and call to bind up our nation and to move on in ways that will set an example for the world and for the next generation. We're kind of in one of those cycles again, where I think people are watching and they care, and the stakes and the issues couldn't be higher, Commander. So our little family is going to be thinking about the road ahead. We're going to be making a decision about whether or not we move forward with what I think is, for our little family, a deeply personal decision on running for the presidency of the United States, because we know the implications are quite profound for us personally and for those around us. Yep. So you'll know where we're going to be the next couple of weeks, making a couple more visits, arriving at a decision that our family is comfortable with. But I hope that through it all, we come to the right decision. No, and that right decision allows us to come right back here for a rematch. And I hope the rematch allows for a victory this next go around. Thank you all for hearing us out. I'd like to get around and shake your hands. I know more importantly you ought to meet Mary Kay and shake her hand. She's a remarkable human being. She's the greatest human being I've ever met, period. And for whatever reason, she's decided to hang out with me for the last 28 years. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you for allowing us to come and interrupt your piece on this Sunday afternoon. We're grateful for it. And we look forward to getting to know you. Thanks, Commander. Thank you.
How you doing?
You know that New Hampshire is beautiful in the entire country. What is my source?